Have you ever wondered why some dentists are very successful and others do less well? So let's talk about that today. So if you look at the Department of Labor statistics, this is coming from their website. This is the statistics for general dentists and how much they make. It falls in this category. So you get this nice little bell-shaped curve that you remember so well from dental school and undergraduate school. And these are the statistics from 2022. The mean annual wage for general dentists was 172,290, and it's coming right from the official website of the Bureau of Department of Labors. And it falls in this bell-shaped curve where the bottom percent, about 10%, was making about 68,000, and the top 75% was making $212,000. And like I said, the mean annual wage was 172,000 for a general dentist. Now, as you see, most doctors are going to fall into this category, which falls into a lot of times between dentists who have jobs and dentists who have owners. And actually, I talked about this before. If you haven't watched the video about some of your options you have when you graduate from dental school, you can work for somebody, you can start your practice from scratch, or you buy a practice. So these are the three main options that most doctors do after they graduate from dental school. And they kind of fall into somewhere around or somewhere in this bell-shaped curve in terms of their income. And obviously you get the low earners and you get the high earners. Now the point of this post is how to be in the top 25%, because as you see people here who make less than $68,000. Here's your average, so most of the people are going to fall in this curve somewhere between 200, somewhere probably around 200,000 and maybe like 120. So most of your doctors working as a general dentist are going to fall in this category, which seems low when you think about the average debt like a lot of the doctors have. But this is actually statistics. I'm not making this up. This is coming from the Department of Labor. Now, do I know a lot of doctors who actually make more than $212,000? Yes, absolutely. There's a lot. There are doctors in this top 25%, but I just want you to kind of realize that a lot of doctors do fall into this average category. But what we want to do is get you to a point where you're in this top 25%. And how do you do that? Because if you go back to the original video, you kind of have three options. You can work for somebody, you can start a practice from scratch, and you can buy a practice. Now, I will tell you, most of the doctors that I know that fall into this top 25%, they usually fall into two categories. One, they actually buy a practice, they buy an established practice, or they start a practice in a very underserved area. Maybe it's an area where they're from, maybe it's a rural area or an underserved area in a city where the doctor actually grew up, so they know a lot of people there. So then sometimes these startups can really take off. Or they buy an established practice that's already producing a lot of income. There are some doctors who work for somebody that this is rare to be in the top 25%, because a lot of the jobs available, they don't pay you like a salary, they pay you on commission, and sometimes they're simply just not busy enough to take you on as an employee, and they're just hoping for the business to grow. So sometimes what I see is a lot of the people in this top 25% come from this area where they're buying a practice that's already established, that has a high cash flow, or they got really lucky and they landed a very, very good job somewhere that's in a very underserved area in a very, very busy office. And this does exist, but it's a small minority. So if you want to talk about how to be in this top 25%, so you want to earn more than $212,000 according to the Department of Labor as a general dentist, and we're not talking about specialists, we're talking about general dentists. There's certain things that you can do. And what are these things that you can do? So how to be in the top 25%. One of the things that I consistently see with doctors who are in this area is that they have taken extra education and some kind of CEs that gives them an edge, where they either learn surgery or they learned orthodontics. I teach orthodontics, so I get students who practice comprehensive orthodontics, and they can do really, really well. Some of them even get a daily guaranteed salary of about $1,500 because they do comprehensive ortho. I do know some doctors who do a lot of surgery, and some of them even just go to several different practices and all they do is surgery. or they bought a practice where they do these procedures in their own offices so they can work less and make more money and be in this top 25%. So a lot of times it's very important to have some kind of an edge on everybody else, some kind of a procedure that you can offer to your patients that the patients need and it's not offered in your area. So for example, I use the example of ortho. If you bought a practice, so you bought an established practice where they were referring all the orthodontics at, and let's say you bought a practice that was doing about $1 million, it's usually you have about as much ortho in a practice as the practice is doing. So if a practice is doing $1 million without ortho, if you add orthodontics to that, you're going to be doing about $2 million in terms of production in that very practice. So you can learn ortho, you can do surgery or something along that line with extra CEs and education. And I'm not talking about like CEs that you take for like an hour and then you go home. I'm talking about like serious continuing education courses that are like, our program is 245 CEs. Like you could take maybe a surgical CE and implants that's going to be like maybe 50 to 100 to 200 CE hours. I'm talking about like serious big time continuing education courses. And again, like I said, if the old saying, if you do what everybody else does, you're going to get the result what everybody else does. So if you're going to keep doing what everybody's doing, you're going to fall into this range, and we don't want that. We want to get you over here in the top 25%. So what are the other things you can do? You can own your own business, and especially the building as well, because why pay rent for somebody else when you can own the building yourself and pay yourself rent? So a lot of doctors will own their own buildings. A lot of the doctors in this top 25%, they will own their own business, and they will own their own building as well and pay themselves rent. And they fall in one of these two categories where they buy an established practice that has a high cash flow already, or they start a practice from scratch in a very underserved area where they can really hit the road running and they can be really, really busy from the get-go. And the underserved area doesn't have to be rural. It could be an urban area, and there are underserved urban areas. You just really have to look, and you have to know what to look for. And it should be an area where patients have a lot of dental need and there are less providers for this certain thing, okay? So to want to be in this top 25%, a lot of the doctors are going to own their businesses and they're going to own their buildings as well, and that's how they have higher earnings. Now, the other thing that I often see as well is partnerships, and these are ownership partnerships where you may be joining in a practice where there might be like 2 or 3 partners already, and they're just looking for another partner because they're really growing a lot, and you're gonna maybe owe a percent of the practice, like 25%. So you're gonna get like your collections minus your overhead, and then you're gonna get a cut from the practice depending on how much you own as well from the whole practice. For example, if you own 25%, then you may get 25% of the profit left over from the practice plus your profits. So just depending how the partnership is set up. So some doctors that fall into this top 25%, what I usually see in my experience, they're coming from these areas where they take really good educational courses. I see a lot of times some doctors do a lot of endo, that they do some kind of specialty procedures. I see a lot of surgery, and ortho is getting more and more common now with general dentists. I'm not talking about ortho like aligners and stuff like that you can only treat a few patients. I'm talking comprehensive ortho where you can treat all the patients in your practice. So some kind of a really good CE courses that these doctors take for specialty procedures that help them develop a niche, and then you own your business and your building, or you work for somebody. Maybe you get lucky and you join a practice where they pay you a guaranteed salary plus a percent of collections. That's very common too. Or you join some kind of a partnership where you're actually a part owner at a certain percent. And then you can be right up here with the top 25%, okay? So this is kind of like my take on how to be in a top 25%. Hopefully this helps. Any questions, just post it below this video. Have a good day. Bye.